Hello there guys, what is going on? SonOfChelsea back here again for another edition of Let's Talk Chelsea. Hope you're doing well and keeping safe on this Tuesday. All about transfers and speculation once again today. A massive article from Matt Law has dropped, kind of an overview of recent events. Romelu Lukaku, some more stories about his potential departure. Gabriel Jesus being linked as well. I think that's quite an interesting target that Chelsea could be going in for this summer. Before we get into any of the news today, make sure to hit that subscribe button and a notification bell so you don't miss any of the uploads on the channel this summer. Also do me a massive favour by hitting that like button because it helps out the channel as well. But let's get into it. Matt Law, Chelsea promised Thomas Tuchel full control of transfers. Thomas Tuchel has been promised that he can take the lead on Chelsea's transfer business by the club's new owners in a shift designed to move closer to the Manchester City and Liverpool models. And that could be good news for Romelu Lukaku's hopes of rejoining Inter Milan if Tuchel informs Todd Boehly that he believes the club record signing should be allowed to leave Chelsea. There was a lot in this, a lot of overview, a lot of names we've heard already. The likes of Ousmane Dembele being a target, Nkunku from RB Leipzig, Raheem Sterling. I found one quite interesting when he spoke about defence, that he mentioned Matthijs de Ligt could be another name that Chelsea go for. The 22-year-old Juventus star is a better option than other targets like Vardio if Tuchel decides that. He is a more experienced and slightly older player, and I know de Ligt has been linked to Chelsea before. But giving a coach control of transfers, a lot of people who have been putting out the hashtag back Tuchel and want to see him given the full sort of vision and backing of these new owners, and also the idea that he can mould a Chelsea squad in his image, I think is a positive. My concern is one that I don't think is unreasonable based on Chelsea history. There are, I think, pitfalls to giving one coach full power, particularly if a club isn't willing to back that coach, and that, if they get the success, if they're able to stay at the club for a long time. I mean, that is one of the things that both Pep and Klopp have had. They've not only had consistent success, but they went through some sticky patches earlier on in their tenures and survived. So they were able to continue that process. So a lot of clubs, at clubs like Chelsea in the past, that just simply is not the case, and there is a danger, as has been seen with previous coaches. The three previous coaches did get signings that they wanted, did get, I guess, specialist signings. You think about Jorginho coming with Maurizio Sarri in the summer of 2018. Frank Lampard got a few signings. I'd even say Antonio Conte got a few of the signings he wanted. I know that was a massive frustration for him in the second summer, but particularly the first summer, he got some players that absolutely suited his system. As we've seen, it's created a squad that is a little bit mixed that Tuchel has had to deal with and has been frustrated with, I think. If you sign players that are specialists, that are limited, that very much are bought for one system, whether they be a wing-back, say, and they're solely a wing-back, so you kind of have to keep them in that position to get the best out of them, or maybe they work in a certain formation, or they work in a certain style of play, transition football, rather than possession football. These are things you'd hope in a perfect world Tuchel has been able to think about in recent months as he's been getting ready for this transfer window, and as he's been having discussions probably internally with the club and also with his coaching staff, knowing what he wants. You'd like to think that at least if he's in control of transfers, he knows the type of players he needs to make his system work the best. So that is a positive. The positive is, I think, that if you want to see Tuchel, like I do, given a chance to kind of build his own squad, this is good. But it doesn't always mean as well that good coaches are great talent identifiers, if that makes sense. That sometimes doesn't quite blend together. They can be great coaches. They can, change players. They can improve players in their system, but they need someone above them. That's why in the long term, I want to see a sporting director. It is the one role Chelsea don't have, and it gives you that sense of consistency and alignment which Chelsea don't have. I mean, you want to speak about moving to the Liverpool and Man City models. Both of those clubs have director of footballs. They have sporting directors. They have a transfer structure above the manager to kind of keep that consistency. And there are many examples in recent years of, the idea that Klopp and Guardiola are out there scouting all these players that their club sign is just ridiculous, because they don't have enough time to do it during a season. But they do have profiles that the club will go after and recommend to the coaches. And I always bring up this example because I think it's the most suitable one. The idea of and the story when a sporting director sort of comes to the fore and sort of shows why they can be so valuable in transfer windows. Julian Brandt was apparently a Jurgen Klopp target back in 2017, but Michael Edwards, the sporting director who's actually leaving now, Liverpool, recommended Mohamed Salah instead, and look how that turned out. Of course, that is an exceptional situation where it turns out, you get this player who turns out to be an incredible footballer and changes your fortunes. But in that sort of sense, I would hope that in the long term, and Matt does reference it later in the article, that there could be some movement on that front in the coming months. Fingers crossed. So at least for the short term, we have this. And then you get into the sort of the targets that could be named. A lot of it does have to do with Lukaku. He's mentioned right at the start of the article, and it's no surprise why. We've got more reports about him wanting to leave Chelsea. Damasio in Italy claiming that Lukaku has been sending sort of secret messages back to Inter Milan for several months. It's just gotten to the point now of Rom. No matter what I think, no matter what you think, I just don't think it's a nice situation for anyone. And I think it is a point of no return. I have to admit, I thought it was a point of no return in the Arsenal game when he got booed. But then he did have a little bit of an upturn in form. I was at the Wolves game. He scored a couple goals. Maybe there's a sense that because it was so unrealistic for him to be sold this summer, well, he's just going to stick around, so we have to make the best of it. But now, there just seems to be no way forward. And I think a lot of people have view Lukaku in that light, and he can't really stick around, particularly if he starts having bad games again. It's just going to be a negative mood, and if it makes things awkward, that is the benefit for Tuchel as well. I'd like to think with full control, not only in terms of transfers, he's able to say who he doesn't want anymore, and he's able to ship out players that he doesn't want. And this applies to Lukaku, this applies to so many players this summer, if we can replace a certain player, you take a player off the books that isn't suiting our style, isn't benefiting the team, is maybe getting older, isn't really at their peak anymore, and we can get maybe a fee for them, sell them off, replace those wages and invest on someone who is more suitable. And this leads me into the link to that, it isn't mentioned in Matt Law's article about this player, but I do like the link because it's not a blockbuster deal. It's not one of those deals that I think everyone would be like, yeah, this is going to be the superstar to change our fortunes like Lukaku was. But if you're looking at profile, and profile is kind of at the top of your list for what you're caring about this summer, I think Gabriel Jesus from Man City makes a lot of sense as a deal because of what he could bring, the style of football he's become very used to at Manchester City. He's not the star at Man City, but there are a few players who are the star. It is based on a team collective, and there are some brilliant individuals. And I think Jesus, I would have more confidence in him coming in and adding value to our attack that has proved very problematic. You kind of look through this squad, and particularly in the attack, and we're kind of asking who is adding value, who is exceeding expectation, who is meeting expectation. And to be honest, there are very few names that pop out, and that has been a massive problem. And obviously Lukaku is kind of front and center of that this summer. But Gabriel Jesus, I think with what he's done at Man City, with the versatility he has across a front line, as we've seen with Pep Guardiola, I think at times maybe he's a little bit underrated and underappreciated for the amount of goals he scored. I mean, he has scored against Chelsea. He has, I think, provided some big moments for Man City. And again, I just think he would suit what we do, the counter-pressing, possession-based style that Tuchel, at least at the current point, is playing. I don't think there would be some really awkward adaptation. And, with the chance to sign him with only, a year left on his contract, the idea of Arsenal being into him. I know this report from in Spain coming out that has Real Madrid, Arsenal, Tottenham, Chelsea all in there. Again, if we're thinking of, if Lukaku goes and maybe we're thinking of signing one or two attackers, as expected, Chelsea pointed out, I think both Dembele and Jesus, again, to some people may not seem like the marquee, massive signing that Chelsea, or one of the signings that Chelsea needs, and there may be other flashy names across Europe. But Chelsea have struggled when we signed the blockbuster name, we've signed a superstar. When we sign players who are maybe a little bit cheaper, maybe a little bit more refined in terms of what they could bring and could actually develop into. I think he's at a good age as well, probably wanting a move to refresh, to restart. I think that's the same with why Raheem Sterling's being linked to Chelsea. So we'll see on that front. I quite like that link. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. I don't think Jesus is a 30 goal season striker, but as I've kept on saying, I think creativity is the biggest thing Chelsea need to improve on this summer. And when you look at the numbers of Ousmane Dembele, if we can sign him and put him into the current attack, I'm not saying that it's just going to overnight it's going to become brilliant, because the players still need to finish chances, but I'm interested to see a Chelsea attack under Tuchel that creates better chances on a regular basis and then make a judgment on the attack. I think there still is that kind of spot where you're looking at the numbers and saying, there are frustrations, there are limitations, there are players who haven't been living up to expectation, but at the same time the system maybe hasn't always been helping them in the best way. Those are my thoughts today. Let me know yours in the comments below about Tuchel gaining full control and transfers, those talks, what's going to happen now. Do you think that's brilliant? Do you think that's maybe a little bit concerning? What are your thoughts on sort of the transfer structure at Chelsea going forward under Todd Boehly? The players I spoke about today, particularly Jesus, I'm really interested to hear your thoughts because it's a name kind of out of left field, but I have to say the more I think about it and the more I probably look into it, I do think it would make, I wouldn't sort of be massively concerned at Chelsea buying him. I think he could prove to be a very decent player to add to Thomas Tuchel's attack next season. If Chelsea pursue it, as I say, Nkunku, Sterling, Ousmane Dembele are still the names being linked consistently. So from the likes of Matt Law, so I'd still probably put those targets a little bit further forward, but we know things can change very quickly. Hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, follow me on Twitter at SonOfChelsea, check out my work on Football London, and I'll see you again very soon. All the best.